April 5, 2001. The oppressive heat of summer suffocated the streets of Ghaziabad. Power outages had become the norm, and as night fell, rooftops became a refuge for restless souls. But for some, this escape would morph into a waking nightmare. That night, Anil Gopal sought nothing more than relief from the relentless heat. But as the city lay silent, something stirred in the depths of the night, something unseen, lurking in the shadows. At precisely 2 a.m., his peaceful sleep was shattered. Claws dug into his flesh, sharp, merciless. His skin burned as unseen scratches tore at his arms and legs, drawing thin lines of blood. In that moment of panic, he glimpsed it, just for a second, a fleeting, monkey-like figure, blending with the shadows. In the dim light, it was there, but now it's gone. Did it really happen? Was it flesh and bone, or a phantom of the mind? The question gnawed at Anil, as the darkness around him seemed to thicken. Whatever it was, the terror was real. Just 2 weeks later, the terror returned, this time to Vinod, another man seeking the cool night air to escape the suffocating heat. Little did he know, the rooftops had become a hunting ground, and he was next. Like so many others, thought the rooftop would offer relief. The city seemed to breathe more easily as the night took over. But as the temperature dropped, an invisible fear crept in with it, and the predator once again emerged from the shadows. It was exactly 3:15 a.m. when it struck. In an instant, Vinod was ripped from his sleep, his body trembling with fear as he felt a sharp, searing pain. Claws like the ones that tore into Anil raked across his skin. His mind raced, his heart pounded. Was it a nightmare, or was the creature real? The pattern had begun to emerge. A creature, half monkey, half man, or perhaps something entirely different, had begun to terrorize the rooftops of Ghaziabad. The fear it left behind was unmistakable, but the creature itself remained a phantom, impossible to capture, impossible to predict. And as the fear spread, so did the attacks. Word of the black monkey, or monkey man, began to grow. No longer was it an isolated incident. The creature, or whatever it was, began to creep into the nightmares of more and more people. Some claimed it was an ancient curse, others believed it was the work of a twisted mind. But the truth remained elusive, hidden behind fear and speculation. What was clear was that the rooftops were no longer safe, and the city had descended into a state of fear-driven chaos. As the sun set each evening, the people of Ghaziabad and beyond were no longer thinking of the heat. They were thinking of the shadows, and what might be hiding within them.
Monkey man, like a
और केले का पत्ता है उधर वो केले के पत्ते
दिखाई नहीं पड़ रहा तो जमीनी से तो नोच रहा है इतना
पब्लिक के खुद आदमी एक टीम बना के वो
Late April, the attacks had spread beyond Ghaziabad, sweeping through the crowded streets of Delhi like wildfire. Fear moved quickly through the city, and with it, the stories. Reports poured in from every corner, each new account describing a creature more terrifying, more impossible than the last. Witnesses claimed to have seen something unlike anything before. Some described a being that seemed almost human, fair-skinned, with sharp, glowing blue eyes, a large nose, and features they believed to be Nepali. Its movements were swift, its presence unnerving, as if it were watching from the shadows. But others painted a much darker picture. It was a towering, grotesque creature, cloaked in shadow and terror, a beast with metallic claws, glistening in the dim light, able to leap across rooftops in a single bound and vanish without a trace. It wasn't just a physical being anymore. It had become a phantom of the night, lurking just out of reach, slipping into nightmares. As the days passed, these stories spread like an infection. The media seized upon every detail, feeding the frenzy. Every sighting, every witness account was sensationalized, broadcasted to a panicked public, desperate for answers. And as each retelling grew more outlandish, so too did the legend of the Monkey Man. Desperation grew, and with it, so did the need for control. Vigilante groups formed. Citizens, armed with sticks and makeshift weapons, roamed the city, determined to find the creature. They believed they could stop it, but fear has a way of distorting reality. Soon, that fear turned to violence. Innocent people found themselves at the mercy of the mob, men, women, even children, mistaken for the elusive monkey man. Accusations flew with reckless abandon. Crowds turned on strangers in an instant, driven by suspicion and panic. Blood was spilled in the streets, not by the creature, but by those hunting it. Despite the growing unrest, the police were no closer to solving the mystery. Over 3,000 officers were deployed across the city, combing every corner, searching for answers. Rewards were offered, 50,000 for any information that could lead to the creature. But what could they chase when the descriptions were as wild as the panic itself? Sketches from witnesses showed no consistency. One described a man with glowing eyes, another a monstrous beast with metallic claws. The faces varied wildly, none of them matching. The more the authorities searched, the more elusive the creature became. It was as if it existed only in the minds of those who feared it. But the fear was real, and with every passing night, that fear grew darker, deeper, more unrelenting. By late May, the panic that had gripped the city seemed to fade into the background. The headlines, once dominated by stories of the attacks, began to report something new. The sightings had suddenly, almost mysteriously, declined. Officials declared that the city was returning to normal, but was it truly over? The streets were calm, but unease hung in the air like a shadow. People returned to their daily routines, but with a lingering sense of uncertainty. The question whispered on every street corner, spoken only in hushed tones. What was it? Was it a man hiding behind superstition, a figment of the city's collective paranoia, or could it have been something far darker, far more elusive? As time passed, the legend of the monkey man faded, but the memory of that fear remained. In the months that followed, psychologists and experts began to offer their explanations. They claimed the entire episode was nothing more than mass hysteria, a psychological phenomenon born out of the city's oppressive heat, its overcrowded streets, its poverty-stricken neighborhoods. It was, they said, the result of fear spreading like a contagion through an already tense community. Delhi, a city overflowing with people and pressure, had become the perfect breeding ground for terror. In the sweltering heat of summer, with power outages, sleepless nights, and tension in the air, the ingredients were all there. It didn't take much for fear to catch fire, for the legend of the monkey man to ignite and spread unchecked through every alley and every rooftop. The conditions were ripe for hysteria, an entire population pushed to its limits, desperate for an explanation for their fear, their anxiety, and in their desperation, they found it in the form of a creature that may never have existed. But even as the experts provided their rational explanations, a darker question remained. Could it all really have been in their minds? Could so many people from so many different parts of the city have shared the same terrifying hallucination? Or perhaps the creature didn't disappear at all. Perhaps the monkey man simply retreated, slipping back into the shadows, biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. And if that's true, when will he return, and where will he appear next?